to the Seafarers Channel. Thank you for joining us today for the International Maritime Center Full Speed Ahead Strategic Action Agenda Lunch and Launch. We have a crowd, a small group of close friends and supporters and officials from the maritime industry who are here with us in person at the International Maritime Center at 4001 7th Street, and all of you who have joined us live on YouTube. We appreciate you being with us. Our program today is going to feature a very esteemed colleague who is a maritime professional and academic diplomat, is what I like to call him, and you will understand why when you hear the experience and dossier that he carries. Quickly about the International Maritime Center, we are an ecumenical alliance for maritime welfare and community connectedness. And why I say community connectedness, because the one thing that connects everybody on this planet is the sea. The Earth is about 72% water. About 90% of that water is in the oceans. And if you are here with an origin other than your family came from anywhere other than here, if you trace it back, they got here on water, because there was a time when there were no airplanes. There are no bridges that will go from the Pacific Islands to the coast of California. So by travel, we are connected by the sea. And by all of the multiple things that happen in the sea. It is the source of much food. It is the source of pleasure and recreation. It is the source of commerce, employment, and income. And so all of us have a big stake in the sea, and we are connected that way. And we at the International Maritime Center have committed ourselves in our strategic action agenda to leverage the knowledge and expertise, ambition, and vision that we have to create greater awareness and education about the maritime environment, as well as about one another, to create a greater sense of connectedness and shared vision and purpose in the world. So today, the first phase of our strategic action agenda is called Connecting Maritime and Community. A lot of times people think of maritime primarily as ports and the actual water and the ports and the docks and so forth and so on. And unfortunately, a lot of times those perspectives are pretty limited and sometimes very negative. We think of ports when we think of them needing to expand and grabbing land that we want for park use or something like that. We think of ports unfavorably when we think about the impact as it relates to pollution and so forth. But there is another side to maritime that is very, very positive. It is a source of income for many, many, many millions of people across the world and so forth. But the relationship between communities and the maritime sector is not hostile, but sort of doesn't exist. And there are not a lot of keepers of those relationships. And so we have elected as the International Maritime Center to take on that role, in addition to our primary role, which is attending to the personal and spiritual care and welfare of the seafarers, those who drive these gigantic boats across the water, but to also pay attention to relationships and care and attention at home as well. And so we are pleased today to have with us one who can speak deeply on this particular subject. He is Dr. Assis Malaquias. He is the professor and chair of the Department of Global Studies and Maritime Affairs at California State University Maritime Academy. He is also the associate at the Corbett Center for Maritime Policy Studies at King's College at the University of London. He has an extensive and distinguished career in academia and public service. Prior to joining Cal Maritime, he served as Overseas Maritime Security Advisor in the Africa Bureau in the U.S. Department of State. He also served as the academic chair for defense economics at the U.S. National Defense University's Africa Center for Strategic Studies. Professor Malaquias' previous appointments include Associate Dean of International and Intercultural Studies and Professor of Government at St. Lawrence University in Canton, New York, Extraordinary Associate Professor of Political Studies at the University of Western Cape in Africa, and a visiting professor at Stellenbosch University. He holds a BA degree from the University of Winnipeg, honors in political science, a master's degree in economics, and a PhD in political science, both from Dalhousie University. His areas of specialization include international relations, strategy, international security, and maritime security. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you none other than Dr. Assis Malaquias.
Good morning. Mr. Wilkins, thank you so very much for the kind introduction. I was looking around and said, well, who is introducing? You certainly cannot be me. Thank you very, very much. You're very kind. It's a tremendous work that you're doing here, Mr. Wilkins. And I appreciate your leadership and I appreciate your vision. Thank you very much. So Mr. Wilkins asked me to speak to the connection or to the link between maritime and the community. So we traded a couple of emails because I wanted to know exactly what he wanted. Did he want me to talk about the Bay Area community? Did he want me to talk about what exactly did he want me to talk about? He was very clear. He wanted me to talk about the community writ large. So I said, okay, I understand now. He basically wants me to talk about three levels: the global level, the national level, and the local level. So that's what I hope to do in the next few minutes. And he was also very clear that he only wanted me to talk for 20 minutes. So that was the hardest part of the assignment, because as you know, professors tend to talk in 50-minute blocks. So therefore, I'm going to try to compress and condense my remarks. As Mr. Wilkins says, the ocean connects us all. It connects us all. And we have, as humans, we have a dependent relationship with the ocean for our survival as a species, not just for our security and our prosperity. So let me say a few things about those two levels, the global level, the national level, and the local level, focusing on the communities. The global level, the global perspective, what we're talking about here, it really is the community of nations. When Mr. Wilkins tells me, look, I want you to focus on the community at the local, at the global level, we are talking about the community of nations. Here, the key to the world's common future is the ocean. Is the key to the global, to the common future that we have as a community of nations. Why is it? Because the ocean has a tremendous potential for boosting growth in terms of jobs, in terms of innovation. As Mr. Wilkins was alluding to, the output of the global economy, of the global ocean economy, is significant. We're talking about $2.5 trillion already today. and that is expected to double to about $5 to $6 trillion by 2030. So it's significant. It's very significant. But beyond economics, the oceans play a very important role in regulating the climate system. Very, very important role. We might as well be thankful to the oceans for the air we breathe, for the oxygen we breathe, because half of the Earth's oxygen is produced by the ocean. Not only that, but the ocean also absorbs the world's extra heat. So the bottom line is that our survival, our existence is very much connected to the ocean. But it's more than that. The bottom line is that there are a number of key pressing challenges facing this community of nations that can only be addressed effectively if the oceans are safe, secure, clean, and sustainably managed. What are some of these challenges? Climate change. We can talk about this for a while. Poverty. Another very important challenge facing the community of nations. Food security. We're going to be about 9 billion people on this earth by 2050. Very, very much connected to how we deal, how we interface with the ocean. The ocean, in fact, can help us deal with many of these challenges that we confront. However, and this is an important however, the oceans are also highly vulnerable to the impacts of human activities. And we can talk about this for a while as well. Now, the community of nations, of course, as you know, is not always peaceful. There are a number of global threats facing the ocean as a result. Overexploitation of the oceans. You have certain fleets, fishing fleets, they're basically devastating the oceans. We have climate change, we have the acidification of the oceans, pollution. I have a student who did a paper for me not too long ago, and she came with the results indicating that we will have more, as mass, more plastic at sea than fish in the next few decades. It's absolutely scary. It's absolutely frightening. Declining biodiversity, also a very, very important challenge that we have in the ocean. And there are also, of course, the geopolitical challenges. China presents us with an important geopolitical challenge in a sense that we have a very differing idea on how we approach the seas, especially the high seas. Some countries believe that the issue of sovereignty extends to the high seas, and therefore certain portions of the ocean belong to certain countries. We believe otherwise. We believe that the high seas will remain and shall remain free. Russia also presents an important geopolitical challenge. Of course, as we've seen today in the Ukraine, Russia is determined to turn Ukraine into a landlocked country. And we are doing our best to prevent that from happening. We could talk about Iran, we could talk about North Korea, we could talk about other geopolitical challenges out there, all taking place with the ocean as the main domain where this is all happening. So that in terms of the community of nations. What about our own community, our own nation? The important national dimensions to the sea. Well, we are a maritime nation, period. This is what we are. We are a maritime nation. In many ways, we are a superpower because we are a maritime nation. We are a superpower because we are able to rule the waves. Without that ability, we are not a superpower. Maybe we're a regional power, or maybe we're just a big country. It's our ability to rule the waves that turns us into a superpower. So there's a link, very direct link, between our own community as a nation and the ocean. We remove the ocean, well, who are we? What are we? Certainly not a superpower. Focusing a bit more on the maritime economy here in the nation, it contributes about $400 billion to the GDP. That's significant, and it keeps growing. If you look at the maritime economy, whereas our economy nationally grows at around 1.5 to 2%, the maritime economy tends to grow usually around 3% and above, 3, 4, 5 and above. So the maritime economy in the nation is very, very dynamic. It produces a tremendous amount of jobs, about 2 million jobs in a whole diverse number of subsectors, from fisheries to tourism, maritime transportation, power generation, research and education, which is my area, national defense, shipbuilding, the list goes on and on and on, offshore oil and gas exploration, and so on and so forth. So this is the maritime economy here in the nation is incredibly robust and growing. And it's growing in some very interesting areas. Food and health security. This nation, our country, is in the forefront in the development of marine resources, linking marine resources to the development of life-saving drugs. Very, very important. We're also in the forefront of aquaculture. In aquaculture, unless we are more careful in the management of the oceans, aquaculture will play a very important role in terms of food security. Of course, we're the United States of America, we tend to focus on technology. So blue technology, it's a very, very robust part of what we do or how we interact with the ocean. One of the things that's really, really exciting taking place here in the nation is the focus on autonomous vehicles. Autonomous underwater vehicles. That's the future. We're at the very cusp of something really, really great. I'll come back to autonomous ships in a few minutes. Renewable energy. Smart technology. Now, see here at the port, the number of super-sized ships is increasing, but they need to enter the ports safely and efficiently. And the United States is in the forefront of smart technology to allow that to happen. There are also expanding opportunities. There are markets that are just now opening. Of course, the Asian market is there, and we're right here. The gateway to the Asian market is expanding and will continue to expand. China, for example, it's on a development course that will continue to challenge the world's ability to provide with everything that market needs. The Chinese middle class, it has not achieved its peak yet. So until that happens, expect China and indeed Asia to continue being very, very dynamic and with a huge capacity to absorb goods and services coming from the rest of the world, and hopefully a lot of it will be coming from the United States. Africa, we don't talk a lot about Africa. Africa is sitting right there, and Africa will just a matter of time before Africa stands up again. There will be a huge market. It's like China 50 years ago. Where was China? And today, we're all talking about China. We'll be doing the exact same thing in relationship to Africa. Again, 1 billion people in Africa right now. The next 25 years, 35 years, there'll be 2 billion people. And they all want the exact same thing that we have. They all want a middle class lifestyle. And a middle class lifestyle requires a lot of goods and services. And then it requires a lot of the things that the maritime industry or the maritime sector provides. You know, again, you will not be able to engage with Africa in any significant ways, absent that maritime, absent those links. Another important opportunity that the maritime sector has is the whole area of autonomous shipping. So it's an opportunity and it's a challenge at the same time. When I talk about autonomous shipping at Cal Maritime, some of my shoreside cadets, they like that idea a lot. But the deck and engine cadets don't like that idea very much, right? Because the deck and engine cadets, it's almost like they fear that autonomous shipping will displace them. They fear the labor force displacement that autonomous shipping will produce or will create. But be that as it may, autonomous shipping is a reality. You know, some countries, Japan, for example, is ready to deploy a whole fleet of autonomous ships. So it's an opportunity for the United States. We are just now beginning to realize that opportunity. We're just now beginning to engage with it. And I hope that this will continue. So that at the national level. But then we also have our own community closer to home. We call California this wonderful, wonderful state. When you look at California, you simply cannot neglect, you cannot ignore the maritime component to it. It's impossible. I'm a transplant to California. I've only been here for 5 years. I don't know if I qualify to call myself a Californian just yet. I don't know what the threshold is. If it's 5 years, yes, I'm a Californian. If it's 10 years, well, I have 10 more to go. But be that as it may, when you look at California, the geography of California, all of the 5 most populous counties in California border the Pacific Ocean. So the link, Mr. Wilkins, is right there, right? All of them. I mean, all the 5 most populous counties in the state border the Pacific Ocean. The economies of these 5 counties and the adjacent 14 shoreside counties, they account for 2/3 of California's residents. You know, in terms of land mass, it's about 20-ish%, but account for 2/3 of the population. But the economy of these counties, when you put it together, it's about $700 billion, right? And this is just in wages. In terms of the GDP, it's $1.7 trillion. It's incredible. And just to put this into context, coastal California generates a GDP that's greater, or let's put it this way, is exceeded by only 11 countries, not counties, countries. in the world, right? There's only 11 countries whose GDP exceeds that of coastal California. And of course, on top of that is the United States, right? But then you have only a few other countries: China, Japan, Germany, France, the UK, Brazil, India, and that's about it. Canada, that's about it, right? So coastal California, it's an incredibly rich, well, I'm almost tempted to call it country, right? Let's call it region. You know, I don't want to get you into trouble, Mr. Wilkins, right? But, you know, just this region is incredibly wealthy. And my point is that it's wealthy because of the link to the maritime. Bring it down to my level, in my little corner of California, at Cal Maritime here in Vallejo. We also play a role. We have a very important role in linking the state to the maritime. How do we do that? We educate. We educate the next generation of leaders in the sector. Whether they're deck and engine, who will be driving the ships. They are driving the ships, and they will continue to drive the ships into the future. Some of them automated. We train the engineers who repair the ships, ensure that the ships are safe. And we train the shoreside leaders, those who are writing policy, those who are devising strategy, the logisticians, the oceanographers, all of those, they will continue to provide the key pillars, the human pillars for the state and indeed for the nation as we continue to develop the maritime sector. So, Mr. Wilkins, this is what I have prepared. I know I probably went over the 20 minutes that you allocated.
Okay.
My apologies. And I thank you again for the invitation, and I'll be delighted to entertain any questions that you or your guests may have. Thank you again.
All right, thank you. We'll take questions from those who are here, and we're retrieving questions from the YouTube chat, and we'll pitch those as well. So does anyone here have a question?
Yeah,
Stunned into silence. Or you understood everything perfectly. There will be a quiz. Yes.
Can you give us more information about autonomous shipping?
Oh, well, what kind of information are you looking for? The technical information, well, I'm not an engineer, but I could give you a sense of how autonomous shipping will disrupt the industry. Now, from a strategic perspective, ask me an easy question on autonomous shipping. Don't ask me an engineering question. Sensors and this and that. I don't do that. Do you have a specific questions on autonomous shipping?
Well, you were noting that Japan is ready to go.
Right.
Like, so what does that look like? They would have just their regular shipping being done with ships that are autonomous? And
That is correct.
don't have crews, don't have captains?
That is correct. So there's, in fact, two things. There's remote shipping and autonomous shipping, right? And Japan is actually thinking in terms of autonomous shipping. And really what it means is that, you have a ship that will perform the functions of a regular ship, except that it has no crew. It's an intelligent ship. They can sense where it is, sense where it needs to go, and adjusts. That's basically what it is. And it just goes from point A to point B without a crew. Now, The conversation in the industry, well, first of all, what's the rationale behind it? A lot of it is cost saving. The operators, they wanna save costs, and labor costs, they're usually up there. That's number one. Number two, there's the promise that autonomous shipping will be safer than what we have right now. Because, in fact, in my maritime security class, I have a whole module on maritime accidents, a whole module on that. A lot of the maritime accidents are, well, it boils down to human error, right? It boils down to human error. Autonomous shipping would remove that from the equation. The promise is that you have cost savings plus safety. So it makes sense for the industry to move in that direction. Now, there's also a third factor, which is Japan, for example, has a labor issue, right? They have a hard time actually getting enough mariners, right? So therefore, they go elsewhere. They go to other countries, except that the Japanese are not particularly comfortable with the standards of training in those other countries, right? So they basically feel like, well, we're better off just kind of going in that direction. And so they're going in that direction a lot faster than, for example, we are, right? So sooner or later we'll catch up, but we don't really have the same level of challenges that Japan has. So our incentive to go that way is not as urgent as, for example, Japan. And some of the Scandinavian countries are focusing on autonomous shipping from a technological perspective. They actually want to build, they want to be in the forefront of actually building the ships that everybody else is going to buy. With the United States, we engage, but we're doing a lot of observing it also. What do we fit, what do we want to do, and so on and so forth. We have not made the strategic decision to jump in and, for example, take a leadership role. That has not happened yet.
Okay, D and then Jim.
Autonomous shipping sounds great, but there's always a human intervention in this part. And piracy is huge throughout the world, around the Horn of Africa, and South America, and especially in Malaysia, and the Philippine Sea. So what are they going to do about that?
Well, it's a very interesting question because, in fact, piracy at two levels: conventional piracy and high-tech piracy. The autonomous ships will be vulnerable to both, right? The conventional piracy, your regular, I don't want to pick on anybody, Somali or whatever, pirate with an AK-47, right? Boarding a ship, we have that, and we kind of familiar with it, and we kind of know how to deal with that, right? When I was working for the Defense Department, I did a lot of work on piracy, and pirates will always be with us. If there are ships, if the sea's going nowhere, ships are going nowhere, pirates are going nowhere. That's just the way it is. But increasingly, we having to deal with high-tech pirates that use a computer, not an AK-47, to commandeer a ship, and that's very, very challenging, very, very challenging. So we have those two types of piracy that we have to deal with. Well, how do we deal with that? Well, for the conventional piracy, we basically use our approach was bifurcated. we deployed, on one hand, military force to kind of patrol certain areas or infested with pirates, to basically ensure that our operators were safe. But we also promoted the hardening of ships so as to make it a little harder for the pirates to take over the ships. So the combination of those two approaches has, by and large, succeeded in quotation marks around the Horn of Africa, in the sense that the incidents of piracy have gone down. But have pirates completely disappeared? Of course not. I keep telling my cadets that the pirates are on holidays. For a decade, we basically provided them with a tremendous amount of money to release a lot of hostages and so on. Now they're spending that money, but they'll come back. They'll come back. Just a matter of time. But the other type of piracy, I think it will be a lot more challenging, a lot more difficult to deal with.
I have to say here that Dr. Malaquias is being quite modest when he talks about piracy. He is one of the world's foremost experts on maritime security and piracy out of the Geneva Center for Security, Maritime Security and Governance. And he's been working on it for a while, so he's one of the top people in the world on that subject. And when he says we, he wasn't talking about the proverbial we in the world. He's like not only at tables, but leading tables on this discussion on a global basis. Anyway, and see, he's got the modest look and everything. Jim, and then.
Thank you for your exploration of these important connections. Just driving in here this morning, the connection between the trucks and the ships and the truck drivers and the ship. Can you talk a little bit about the health of that relationship between the shipping industry and the trucking industry and the pressures that these guys driving these trucks face?
Well, that's called the supply chain. Yeah, that's called the supply chain. These are very important nodes in the supply chain. And it has to be seamless. It has to be from the producer over in Asia somewhere, the people, the pilots who bring the ships over here, to all the work that's being done here at the port, to the trucks, all the way to the consumer actually gets that whatever good it is that the person goes to Walmart to purchase, not understanding that that is the final stop of probably 1,000 steps, right? So that's a very important part of it. If you remove this node from the chain, everything collapses. So that's the relationship between him and the ship. If you remove the ship from the chain, everything collapses, right? So the whole entire chain has to be healthy, has to be robust. So the truckers, we depend on them. So it behooves us to treat them well. They have enough rest, they have enough, how's their salary, and so on and so forth. The one thing you do not want is to have a shortage of truckers. You don't want that. The same way you don't want to have a shortage of ships. You do not want to have, but we want the whole chain to be very healthy. Right? So that is the relationship. That is the relationship. Yes, you got around, you look at them, they seem to be pretty happy. You want to keep them that way. You want to keep them that way. Because otherwise, literally, the whole economy collapses. What I was talking about here, there's trillions of dollars and so on and so forth. That's it. They're the ones who kind of hold the whole thing up, right? No trucks, no trains, no ships. What do we have? We have a shell of an economy. That is the connection. That's the link.
Okay, we're going to take a question from Sam, and Bob will get the last question. We are about out of time on our live programming. So Samantha, please.
Like you were saying about if any of those things collapse and the whole system collapses, and within those trucks, within those ships are people and seafarers. And so I come from a labor perspective. And so my question was, when you talk about autonomous shipping, is there any discussion around like a just transition for those people that are working in those jobs? And I know for like, we're talking about the United States, so obviously we want to have a robust merchant marine. And so what would those merchant mariners do if we were to pivot to autonomous shipping? And then also for those seafaring producing nations, for the labor producing nations such as the Philippines and India, what would that look like in a just transition?
Well, there will be dislocation. That I will guarantee you. There will be labor force dislocation. Now, as a nation, and I've been talking about this for a while, as a nation, we need to start thinking very quickly about this dislocation. It's happening. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle. You simply cannot. You know, autonomous shipping, cars, planes, that genie is being out of the bottle for a while, right? Some of us like Tesla, some of us don't like Tesla, but Tesla is here. Tesla is going nowhere, and Tesla is committed to do autonomous cars, right? Same thing for autonomous shipping. But shipping is very different from cars. Because we have no choice. When it comes to shipping, we have no choice. When it comes to cars, like I said, well, you know, I'll buy this car, not this car. When it comes to shipping, we have no choice, you know, because we depend on it. It's existential. Now, what we really need is a strategy. It's a national strategy that basically looks at the situation this way. Okay, well, we will have labor dislocation. What exactly will these individuals do? Well, can they be retrained? So autonomous shipping, what will it produce in terms of employment opportunities? And if we can identify those employment opportunities, are we training these individuals who are already in the industry or coming into the industry? Are we training them for those opportunities, or are we training them for the ships of today, right? Well, I don't think that the transition will be immediate. The transition will probably take several decades, right? However, the reality is that the shipping industry 20 years from now, 50 years from now, will not be the shipping industry that we have today, right? So for me, as a professor, training my cadets for the industry of today, instead of training them for the industry of 30 years from now, it makes no sense. Same way, at a much bigger level, for the nation to train a labor force for the ships of today, for the infrastructure of today, it makes no sense. We need to be looking at the infrastructure and the ships of 30 years from now. Because an 18-year-old student, an 18-year-old cadet coming to Cal Maritime today, well, he'll retire in what? He will retire in 50 years. In 50 years, the industry, I guarantee you, the industry will not look anything like what we have today. So it behooves us at the state level, at the national level, to think carefully through these changes and anticipate them. Be proactive as opposed to being reactive. If we are reactive, we're going to have problems, all sorts of problems, right? However, if we are proactive, we're going to say, oh, okay, well, that's what the industry may look like in 30 years. This is what we have to do right now. That's how we have to do it. This is how we have to do it. That's how we have no choice.
All right, we'll take the last question from Bob McCoy.
Kind of tying this all together, getting back to the relationship between the maritime industry and at the local level. I think it's the ILWU. They really control shipping along the entire west coast of America. Any other industry that would be, and the west coast of America shuts down. Any other industry that would be considered a monopoly.
Yeah, what's the question?
The question is, do you have any thoughts on how to solve that? Should it be solved? Should it be allowed to exist? The truckers that he was referring to would like to get 2 loads per day in here. They have to sit outside in that big long line. They can't make it. What do you think?
So that's actually a political question.
Sorry?
That's a political question, right? And I'm just a regular professor, right? I'm just a regular prof, right? The unions, they're part and parcel of this nation. They have built this nation in California and so on and so forth. Do they have a role? Do they have a place? Of course. But how should we redefine? Should we rethink? Well, you have to do that in consultation with the union. You have to do that in consultation with the union. They have to be at the table. When we talk about autonomous shipping, when we talk labor displacement and so on and so forth, they have to be at the table. What you do not want is to have political equations where you have what's called a negative sum game, right? You want to be in a situation where everybody wins. If the truckers win, everybody wins. If the unions win, everybody wins. To do that, we all have to sit around at the table and basically ask each other in conversation respectfully, how we can all, uplift ourselves. I think that's the only way. I know I gave you a political answer because you gave me a political question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Malaquias. As you can see, I think that his talk perfectly demonstrated the reality that we all are connected, and there's so many things that are connected to that water that connects us all, and therefore such an important matter of connecting maritime to community. And when we say it in this context of connecting maritime to community, we mean proactively reaching out, welcoming, talking, having conversations, identifying critical issues and opportunities, problems to be solved, and possibilities to be imagined about what we can do together. Because in point of fact, maritime and community are connected anyway. And it will take all of us and various aspects of the spectrum of activity to sustain, first and foremost, those waters themselves and those waters that feed us and are our primary life source on this particular planet. In our next attempt at that, today we are kicking off our strategic plan, Full Speed Ahead, and the first phase, Connecting Maritime to Community. The primary program that we will use to connect maritime and community, excuse me, is called Maritime Culture Currents. Many people don't necessarily see themselves and people like them in maritime. For the most part, we believe maritime to be a male-dominated, and let us be serious, in the United States, a white male-dominated industry. Well, in some respects, that was true. In less respects, that continues to be true. But as we said before, there's a distance between maritime and community in terms of visibility on a day-to-day basis and identity among different people with where they fit in the maritime spectrum. So we have a series called Maritime Culture Currents. It is an education initiative of the Seafarers Ministry of the Golden Gate, which is one of the members of the International Maritime Center. And in that series of programs, we look at the history of diverse cultural groups and what has been their interaction with the maritime sector and the maritime environment. What has maritime done to help shape their culture? And likewise, what has that particular cultural group done to help shape the maritime sector? So we have a series that will be starting in May. On May 18th, we will start making waves. We'll look at the her story of women in maritime. Even though they still are a very small percentage, there are significant achievements that women have made and continue to make and will continue to make in the maritime world. We have Passing Through the Waters, that will be on May 19th. And that looks at the maritime heritage of African Americans, which for me as an African American, I was astonished when I found out. The first thing that comes to my mind when we think of water and African Americans is the Middle Passage, when we involuntarily took a very long voyage in the belly of boats across the Atlantic. That was not fun. I was not there, though I am aging, but I'm told. And so we're going to take a look at that. That is May 19th. And with us then will be Dr. Kevin Dawson, who will speak on the spirituality of water and the phenomenon of water in different cultures. It means different things to different cultures, but all of them fairly sacred and so forth. And that's another dimension of water that is significant. And then we'll have Ebbs and Flows, the legacy of Asian Pacific Americans and Asian Pacific Islanders and Asian Americans, which May is Asian Pacific Islander month. And May 18th, when we do Making Waves, is the International Day for Women in Maritime, as prescribed by the International Maritime Organization. Again, we will be on our YouTube channel, the Seafaring channel. And we hope that you will join us again. But in the meantime, full speed ahead. Thanks a lot.